They lied when they told you peace was the prize, that happiness is the summit, that safety is the god. You were sedated, not saved. Your rituals of virtue are tranquilizers. Your faith in systems is a leash tied around your own throat, and every like, every promotion, every approval, it's a coin placed upon your dead eyes. You are not dying. You are embalmed. The herd is vast, but none are together. Each man clutches his phone, not his soul. You call this connection. I call it the great forgetting. You pray to 1,000 screens, and they pray not back. Your prophets are algorithms. Your angels are metrics. Your commandments are terms of service. And you wonder why your nights are hollow. You don't need salvation. You need confrontation. Not from me, but from the version of you that you buried beneath politeness, performance, and paycheck. That feral God within the one who never asked to be understood, only unleashed. He waits beneath your skin, not asleep, but shackled. And every compromise, every apology for being too much, too loud, too intense, tightened his chains. They taught you morality like a sedative. Sit, smile, comply. But virtue, true virtue, is volcanic. It is the eruption of sovereignty against the slope of conformity. Do you hear that rumble? That is not fear. That is the tectonic groan of your spirit preparing to split the surface of who you pretended to be. You were not made to kneel. You were made to stand so tall the gods look up. Yet you've traded Olympus for a cubicle, a throne for a desk, your will for a job title. How many more sunsets must die before you do? Responsibility is not a burden. It is your divinity. It is the sacred weight of being your own priest, your own tyrant, your own creator. Religion gave you rules, but responsibility gives you the forge. And from this forge, you do not receive commandments, you create consequences. The cross was never meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be carried, and carried not in guilt, but in defiance. Not to remind you of sin, but to remind you that pain is the signature of transformation. They told you to love your neighbor, but forgot to tell you to become someone worth loving. They told you to forgive, but never how to fight back with nobility. They sold you heaven like insurance. But the only eternity worth having is the one you build in every second you choose your own law. Who are you when no one is watching? That is your God. Who are you when everything crumbles? That is your scripture. Who are you when you are not afraid to be hated, abandoned, misunderstood? That is your resurrection. You ask me, what is truth? And I ask you, have you bled for it? If not, then you've only inherited opinions, not earned knowledge. The truth is not handed down. It is wrestled from the abyss, naked and screaming. And the abyss does not give discounts. Only those who dare to descend return with fire in their eyes. You want to be healed? Then break. Shatter the image they made of you. Burn the mask. Stand bare before your own judgment, and do not flinch. This is not therapy. This is sacred war. Do not look for God in temples. Look in mirrors cracked by your own fists. You won't find salvation in hymns, but in the howl of your own becoming. The Übermensch is not a myth. He is you if only you dared to unchain yourself from who you were told to be. Every weakness you excuse is a soldier you've disarmed. Every desire you repress becomes a ghost in your basement. Every rule you obey without question is a nail in your own coffin. Rise not by asking for power, but by becoming the kind of being that power obeys. You are not broken. You are waiting. And I am not your teacher. I am your tremor. So burn your apologies. Drown your nostalgia. Poison your comfort. And let only one question remain. What would the God within you do if he were finally free? This is not a sermon. This is a storm. And I will not close it. I will leave it open, like a wound that refuses to heal until it has made something holy of your suffering. You don't need religion. You need responsibility. You need to become the law you live by. and the God who enforces it. Now, begin. They sold you sanity as if it were gold, but it was only conformity melted into the shape of a man. They made you normal by making you numb, and now you sit there, dressed in balance, aching for blood. The mirror does not lie. It shows a king sedated, a warrior pacified, a prophet made polite. You crave meaning? Then stop begging for it. Meaning does not arrive wrapped in scripture or slogans. It erupts like a meteor when your cowardice finally fractures. Meaning is not given. It is taken. It is seized from the neck of existence by those savage enough to stop waiting for signs. Your freedom is a farce if it costs you your fire. Every right you have is a leash if you use it to avoid responsibility. You are not free if you blame. You are not free if you wait. You are not free if you still need to be told what you are. Freedom is not permission, it is possession. Possession of your instincts, your failures, your lusts, your limits, and yes, your power. They told you God was watching, but they never told you you were supposed to become Him. That was the final lie, the one they built temples around. Not to raise you, but to cage you with reverence. But reverence is the gravestone of rebellion, and worship, when not aimed inward, is surrender disguised as devotion. How do you awaken? You begin by setting fire to every thought that kept you small. You slaughter your comforts. You silence the clamor of consensus with the roar of your own will. You do not seek light. You become lightning terrible, divine, uninvited. The apocalypse they fear is the moment you stop pretending. And do you not feel it? The trembling in your chest, it is not fear, it is recognition. That behind every mask you wore, there was something ancient watching, waiting not to be saved, but to be remembered. You do not need healing. You need hunger. The hunger that dares to devour even its own gods. You do not need love. You need loyalty to the part of you that never cowered, never bowed, never betrayed itself to belong. That part is not dead. It is dormant, like a lion in winter. And when it rises, oh, when it rises, the heavens will tremble and hell will kneel, because there is no power in this world greater than a man who no longer needs it. So tear the veil, burn the scriptures of your former self. Step out not as a seeker, but as the storm that ends the search. Let the dead have their peace. You were born for war, and the battlefield is you. You call it anxiety, but it is the agony of a god exiled from his own temple. You call it depression, but it is the mourning of your lion self, imprisoned in the petting zoo of social graces. You call it burnout, but it is your will to power vomiting out the mediocrity it was forced to swallow. These are not illnesses, they are rebellions. The soul does not whisper, it howls. But you've muffled it with mindfulness apps and small talk. You have mistaken sedation for serenity, coping for courage, and balance for brilliance. No volcano was ever meant to be balanced. It was meant to erupt, and so are you. You were taught that your fire must be managed, regulated, channeled into productive tasks. But the fire does not want a task. It wants a throne. It wants to command. It wants to destroy everything that insulted it with utility. Your fire was not born to warm hands. It was born to burn false idols. And still, you wait for the right time, for permission, for proof that you are ready. But the abyss does not wait. The gods do not wait. The grave does not wait. Why then do you? The world is not dying from evil. It is dying from obedience. Obedience to trends, to tribes, to tired truths. Every man who bows without understanding is a silent priest of decay. And every smile that hides a scream is another step toward extinction. This civilization does not need saving, it needs to be dared into rebirth. I do not ask you to believe in yourself. I ask you to become unrecognizable to the self you used to believe in, to slaughter the version of you that begged for approval and replace him with one who creates it. Let your fear become your altar, and upon it, sacrifice your former life. There is no afterlife. There is only the life after you've torn the skin of conformity off your bones and danced naked in your own flame. Do not ask me for hope, I offer you holy warfare. Do not ask me for peace, I offer you the sword of solitude. Do not ask me for guidance, I offer you the cliff, the wind, and the command to leap. And when you do leap, you will not fall. You will remember. Remember the height from which you came. Remember the roar you silenced. Remember the name that only thunder knows. This is not about becoming something. It is about undoing everything that was done to you, because you were not born, you were forged. And now, you must burn again. You speak of destiny with your lips, but betray it with your calendar. You measure days in deadlines, not dangers. You count weeks, not wounds. You have grown efficient, optimized, streamlined, but for what? To become a well-groomed ghost haunting your own biography? You have traded the labyrinth for a spreadsheet, the myth for a resume, the tempest for a routine. And in doing so, you have committed the only true sin. You have survived your own magnificence. Where is the man who dares not to be understood? Where is the woman who walks into the desert of herself and does not return? You are not meant to be consumed, you are meant to consume. But you've spent your strength trying to be digestible. You've made yourself polite, presentable, palatable. You've sanded down your edges until you no longer bleed when you move. That is not growth, that is extinction. You are not here to be good. You are here to be true. And truth, when lived without apology, is blasphemy to every institution built on comfort. Your authenticity is not welcome, it is radioactive. It melts every mask. It dismantles every hierarchy. It reminds the world of what it buried to survive. But what they call survival, I call betrayal. Betrayal of the daemon within the unbending, unsellable core, that flame-lit sovereign who does not negotiate, who does not fit into philosophies, who does not ask for spiritual permission slips. You have that core, and if you cannot find it, it is only because you've spent too long asking questions, instead of issuing commands. Do not seek mentors, become the voice that mentors fear. Do not follow trails, leave a scar across the landscape. Do not look back. The past is a cemetery of cowards who waited for signs. Responsibility is not a duty. It is the divine privilege of those who no longer kneel. Responsibility is the sword you craft from your own suffering. It is the armor made from every betrayal you refuse to let break you. It is the vow you take not to the world but to the God who speaks in your blood. They will call you arrogant, ungrateful, blasphemous. Let them. Their praise is poison. Their curses are confirmation. You do not need their acceptance, you need their resistance. For it is resistance that sharpens the will, that tempers the soul, that distinguishes the chosen from the comfortable. And you, if you hear this, you are chosen, not by prophecy, not by birthright, but by the fact that this truth burns you. Instead of boring you, the others sleep. Let them. You rise. Rise with wrath, with clarity, with the terrible joy of no longer asking permission to exist. Your war is not with others, it is with every version of you that made peace with the cage. And your weapon is not hate. It is the holy hammer of refusal. Refusal to shrink. Refusal to explain. Refusal to be less than what your shadow screams you are. And when the final idol crumbles, and the final lie is spat out from your teeth, you will not find peace. You will find power. And with that power, you will not conquer the world, you will replace it. This is not the end of your story. This is the detonation. You ask, am I allowed to be monstrous? As if monstrosity were a crime. I answer, you are allowed not monstrous but immense. You are not the error born of your wounds. You are the eruption that those wounds foresaw. To fear your power is to honor your chains. but melted chains pierce the earth. There is a venom that sickens hearts, the venom of apathy. It is worse than hatred, for hatred declares war. Apathy whispers, "I do not care," and with that whisper buries purpose in a coffin of dust. Some call this peace. I call it spiritual death. You have been taught to adjust, to adapt, to make peace with every system that succeeds in naming you. That is not balance. That is dying softly. You were not made for adaptation. You were made for transfiguration. And transfiguration begins with the refusal to understand yourself on others' terms. It begins with uprooting every token version of humanity they sold in the marketplaces. Tokens of pity, of scholarship, of policy, and trading them for the raw material of your own becoming. Let them curdle. In the valleys of the mediocre, they offer you belonging at the price of your voice. That is no bargain. Your voice is your lightning. And it is only yours when it detonates in chaos, not when it settles into echoes. Your duty now is to live dangerously, not in self-destruction, but in self-resurrection, not in spectacles, but in sacred solitude. Voltaire said, "What does not kill makes you stronger." No, something that does kill you cleanses you of falsehood. Only something that kills you reveals the God who survives. You have been half dead ever since you accepted comfort as your witness. Now let everything collapse that was not forged in your fire. Yes, you will face nights when the weight of your own shadow feels insurmountable. Nights when the world laughs at your naked refusal to belong. But let the laughter be your halo. For you stand not within the safety of congregation, but on the crest of collapse. And on that crest, you discover two truths: that solitude is sovereignty, and the abyss is home. They have offered you two swords, love and security. You chose love, and it turned out to be restraint. You chose security, and it turned out to be suffocation. Now take the third sword, responsibility to the self. That sword does not cut your fate, it shapes it. It does not defend you, it undoes you. It does not comfort you, it commands. Your ancestors never spoke of responsibility because they had gods to obey. You do not. You have no idols. The only altar you kneel to now is failure, the kind not disguised as lesson, but battered into you by truth. Every time you lowered your gaze to avoid a fight, you should have thought you obeyed the death of possibility. But there is no shame in the fight, only in the silence that followed. Imagine now your lineage rewound, not from comfort, not from expectations, but from raw will. From the days your eyes first recognized beauty, terror, hunger, from the days you decided without witnesses that you were not meant for any story but your own, that you would write it in fire. In that moment of origination, you did not inherit sacrifice, you earned it. You took the weight to awaken. You pledged yourself to become the question no priest could answer, the force no law could tame. You shattered idols of compliance and whispered, "I am not for worship. I am for war." Do not ask me to end this. End is for comedies. Begin with every war cry you've made silent. Begin with every impulse you've called profane. Begin with the darkness that trembles beneath your skin. Because something ancient sleeps there, not hungry, not divided, not fragmented. And when it wakes, it will walk across the crater of your fears and crown you with your own ashes. This is not a performance, it is a possession. You are not acting the divine, you are its reawakening. You do not perfect the past, you explode it. Let your old self be a dust storm bearing no legacy, but revelation. In the storm, only your will survives, and from that will rises a new universe for you, with new values, sharp and solitary. Now take breath, not for comfort but to ignite. Do not pray to the winds, become the wind. Do not speak of storms, be the storm's herald. Do not gather comfort under a god, gather carnage beneath your own clarion call. Let your life be the uproar of the earth, remembering itself after centuries of sleep. They think you crave direction. You crave destruction, destruction of every half-formed truth that preached obedience in the name of love. Love from a God that told you to kill your freedom. Obedience to systems that demanded sacrifice before they offered meaning. You crave redemption, not from sin, but from civility. You ask, will I be understood? Understandable is the grave, understood is the shackled. Your task is not to earn understanding, it is to erase expectation, to dismantle the architecture of hope that pleaded for your restraint, to replace it with a furnace where your avatar is forged again and again. This is the crucible. Responsibility for your world wrought on the anvil of your suffering. Each blow is guilt you refuse to bear. Each strike is failure you refuse to forgive until it births more power. You must bleed to believe. Not in gods, not in causes masquerading as gods, but in the infallibility of your own becoming. You carry the flameless concept of a god in your limbs, but you do not worship it, you will summon it. You do not follow it, you will become it. You are not seeking destiny, you are declaring it. With every decision to stand alone, with every refusal to soften, with every conquered fear. Now, stillness, not for comfort, but to listen. Beneath the quake of your transformation, there is one sound, a pulse recasting itself, a heartbeat naming new blood. That blood is your scripture, the rhythm is your law, and the movement is your apocalypse. Rise at that heartbeat, unite in that impulse, and let the world burn its old story while you speak your own into being. Not with prayer, but with decree. Not with longing, but with ownership. Not with reverence, but with revolution. This monologue ends, but you remain. Not as a teacher, but as a living thunder, a consequence, a covenant between nothingness and creation. You are neither lost nor found. You are beginning. Burn again. What breaks first is not the body, but the myth it obeys. And the myth you obey is this, that your life is something to preserve. But I say unto you, life is not to be preserved, it is to be provoked. The soul does not ripen in safety, it ignites in risk, in rupture, in the sacred desecration of all you thought you were. They warned you of pride, called it sin, as if it were fire forbidden to mortals. But pride is not sin, it is the memory of divinity. It is the roar of your eternal origin echoing through the dust of your blood. False humility is the tombstone placed upon that roar. And every time you apologize for your power, a god vomits in the sky. You shrink before the mediocre because they have numbers. But what is a crowd, if not a graveyard of forgotten greatness? You owe them nothing. Let them chant their virtues and chain themselves with compromise. Let them build towers from their fears and worship the ceiling as a sky. But you must remain the unroofed flame, the sacred heretic, the wild question that no system can digest. You were told to integrate, to harmonize, to become digestible. But tell me, what melody has ever torn open heaven? What harmony has ever forged a star? No, you must become the discord that births a new scale, the dissonance that makes even the angels weep with awe. You were not born to make sense. You were born to make meaning. There is no map for this becoming, no lighthouse, no compass. You are not a pilgrim, you are a volcano, and your path is carved in magma, not footprints. So stop asking for direction. Ask instead what you must destroy to begin. And destroy you must. Destroy the piety that pacified your instincts. Destroy the sentimentality that kept you chained to people you've outgrown. Destroy the narratives that made you a minor character in your own legend. And above all, destroy the part of you that still waits for a sign that you are allowed to be vast. You are not allowed, you are compelled. Compelled by the sheer terror of what you would become if you refused to rise. Compelled by the haunting silhouette of the god you might be if only you stepped out of the disguise called normal. If only you stopped mistaking numbness for peace. If only you let the howling take over. Yes, the howling. It returns now, doesn't it? That primeval chant that lives beneath your tame voice. You hear it when everything else stops, when the applause fades, when the screens go dark, when you are alone with the unbearable truth that you were meant for more than this, that your soul did not descend into this flesh to pay bills and manage impressions. Your soul came here to wage war against all that is small, all that is expected, all that is easy. Your soul came not to find heaven, but to summon it, not to obey divinity, but to become it, not to be filled, but to overflow. You fear madness, but madness is only the word they use for freedom that has lost its leash. You fear rejection, but rejection is proof you are alive. You fear failure, but failure is your truest prophet. It tells you what still burns, what still matters, what still calls. And you are called. Not once, always, in dreams, in breakdowns, in those midnight hours when everything you've built feels fraudulent. That is not despair. That is the threshold. The door to your highest self rusted shut by years of compromise. And now, you must kick it open. Kick it open with refusal. Refuse to make peace with a life that doesn't quake. Refuse to settle for love that does not resurrect. Refuse to perform instead of possess. Refuse the soft pillow of being liked. Demand instead the rough bed of being real. You don't need validation. You need victory over yourself. The only enemy worthy of your fire is the one that stares back from the mirror with trembling eyes. And when you conquer that trembling, when you laugh in its face with blood on your teeth, you will no longer need to prove anything. You will simply be a force, a flame, a fracture in the old world's spine. And from that fracture, something monstrous and magnificent will emerge. Not a better version of you, a different species entirely. Not enlightened, not improved, but initiated into the divine cruelty of true responsibility, where every step is chosen, where every silence is holy, where every action is a sermon to the abyss. And the abyss will not devour you, it will crown you. So do not wait. Not for clarity, not for consensus, not for calm. Begin now, while your voice still trembles, while your heart still remembers how to break, while your bones still ache for more than motion. Begin, because the fire does not wait. The gods do not beg, and the future does not forgive hesitation. This is not inspiration. This is revelation. You were not born to be understood. You were born to unmake the world and rebuild it with your breath. And now the silence begins to listen. It has watched your tremors, your unravelings, your sacred defiance. It has seen your masks crack one by one, not with shame but with revelation. And in that cracking, you did not crumble. You emerged, not as a man, not as a woman, but as a force that no longer obeys the names it was given. What remains when all that is false has fallen away? What remains when you stop chasing purpose and begin embodying it? What remains when the applause ends and the world forgets your name, but your eyes still burn like torches lit by a godless heaven? You remain, not as hope, not as promise, but as law. The law that says, I exist not to be spared, but to be spent. I exist not to be loved, but to become love's destruction and its resurrection. I exist not to be remembered, but to remind. To remind the world that there was once a being who dared to rise without asking how high, a being who dared to fall without begging to be caught, a being who became a myth while still breathing, a scripture with skin, a volcano that chose to walk. And yes, they will come, the priests of fear, the clerics of convenience, the preachers of perfect balance. They will offer you answers again, offer you peace again, offer you comfort like a crown made of silk and poison. And you will smile, and you will decline. Not because you are cruel, but because you are awake. Because you remember what it cost to rise. because you know the taste of fire and will never trade it for sugar, because you have forged in your bones a new covenant to belong to no one, not even to yourself. There will be no ending, only intensity, only further ascents. You will not conclude, you will continue. You will haunt their ideals, blaze through their truths, and shatter their ceilings with the joy of your relentless becoming. And when the stars watch you walk away from your old name, your old face, your old life, they will not mourn. They will burn brighter, for they recognize one of their own. So walk now, not into peace, but into power, not into rest, but into reign. Let every step be a question God cannot answer. Let every breath be a trumpet that wakes the dead ideas still floating in the air. And if you must pray, pray not for mercy. Pray to never forget this fire, this tremble, this truth, that you did not come here to be saved. You came to save the sacred from salvation. You came to undo what was done in the name of order. You came to become the voice that silence fears. And now that you remember, do not fall back asleep. Begin again as fire, as law, as storm,